Welcome back, everyone, to our December #HireMe 2022 Employer Panel Series hosted by BCJobs.ca. My name is Chelsea, and I'll be your BC Jobs host for today's panel. I'm just going to let Scott in. Welcome, Scott. Scott, who's just joining us, feel free to let us know in the chat where you're calling in from and what industry you're in. All right. So for those of you who are new to these panels, every month we have 3 special guest speakers from various sectors join us for a little Q&A on what is new with their organizations and to talk a bit about the job market and hiring in British Columbia. So we're proud that BC Jobs is Western Canada's biggest online jobs board. And to stay in the loop about companies that are hiring, you can also check out our Innovators podcast to learn more about what industry leaders are saying about the job market. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to encourage our audience. So for those of you who just joined us and didn't hear me before, you can type your questions into the chat box below. There's also a feature which you can use during our Q&A. It's under reactions, so you'll see like a little smiley face at the bottom. If you click on that, there will be a raise hand feature in there, so you don't have to physically raise your hand. You can raise it from the little like emoji sign below in the reaction button. So I encourage you to do that also when it comes time for our audience Q&A. But for now, if you have a question that comes to mind, feel free, plug it into the chat and I'll get to it during our Q&A time. Okay, so that's about questions. So today we'll be offering a job candidate pitch event right before we start our audience Q&A. So with this, we have this every month. So basically it's 3 candidates can nominate themselves in the chat. And I'll give you more details when that time comes, but you have the opportunity to pitch yourself in 30 seconds to our panelists. Ooh, I know, a little scary, a little intimidating, but it does help to, work on those rusty public speaking skills. So we'll give you about 20 to 30 minutes to get up the courage to nominate yourself for that pitch event. And I'll remind everybody when that time comes. And there is an incentive. So after the pitch event, you will receive a resume consultation invitation from BC Jobs, and we'll happily look over your resume and LinkedIn profile, in the next coming week or so. And so we'll send you an invitation for that, kind of as your prize for pitching yourself. So there's an incentive. All right, so let's get some introductions going here. I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Allison Betton, CHRO at Peloton Technologies. Allison, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and we'd love to know more about you and Peloton Technologies.
Well, thank you very much, Chelsea. I appreciate the introduction. And the one question I didn't ask when we were getting organized before the session was who was going to have to introduce himself first. But
I went alphabetically.
I knew you might. And with a name like Allison Betton, my whole life I've been introducing myself first. So I'm kind of used to it. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. And what a wonderful turnout to see this many people coming to the event. I'm delighted to see that and delighted to join your panel. So as Chelsea mentioned, I'm the Chief HR Officer for Peloton Technologies. And just to get the little bit of disappointment over for anybody who might have been hoping this is Peloton, the bicycle folks, we are Peloton, the payments folks, not Peloton, the bicycle folks. We are the payments folks you may never have heard of, but we are also the payments folks who have processed over $1.2 billion in the last little while. So we move a lot of money. We are very proud of that. So I joined Peloton back in 2015 as their only HR person. And we were a teeny little team of 4. And I'm very proud of the team that we're growing and the culture that we're growing. And in the past year, as you'll hear a little bit more today, we've grown our team. Oh my goodness, I can't do the math that fast. I think we've multiplied 6 times, I think is the correct math on that one over the last little bit.
Wow.
So yes, our company is booming and we're very proud, as I said, of our culture and our environment. And I love getting to do HR every day. I love being involved in everything. And the other little piece of that is because I also teach HR at Camosun College. So every day when I'm in the classroom, I get to talk about real life HR experiences that I have doing my HR job at Peloton. So it's a really lovely, lovely mix. So I was very intrigued to see many of the chat comments there about folks looking to change jobs or change industries, because I hear a lot about that from my students as well. So that's a little bit about me. And I will hand it over to your next panelist.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Allison, and I'll pass over the virtual mic over to Clare.
Great. Awesome.
And I should actually introduce yourself, Claire. It's Clare Walton, recruitment marketing strategist at BC Public Service. So, Claire, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm actually surprised I'm second because usually alphabetical, I'm at the end. So this is good. It's switching it up for me. So I'm Claire. Yes, I'm with the BC Public Service. And I work as a recruitment marketing strategist, which usually no one knows what that is. Government, we're not great at naming our roles. So basically what I do is I work in HR, but I work in a really fun area of HR. So what I get to do is I get to connect with external job seekers, and I really get to help demystify the process. So I host virtual presentations once a month, and they help you to understand how to apply to public service, how to stand out, tips and tricks for your interviews and your resumes and all of that good stuff. And yeah, I've been with public service for about 5 years. I have worked with the public service, then went away for a bit, then come back. And that's actually quite common. Not everyone anymore stays forever. But I would say that the reason that I came back to public service and the reason that lots of folks come back to public service is really the opportunities that there are. So I've worked in HR as I do now, but I've also worked in equity, diversity, and inclusion. I've worked in communications. So I've got to put on a lot of different types of hats, all while staying with the same employer. And that was one of the things that drew me back, was the ability to grow my career while moving around, but staying with that one employer. And then the only other thing I wanted to sort of open with is just so that you have an idea of the scale of the public service. We're the largest single employer in BC. We have over 35,000 employees, and we currently have over 200 different types of jobs in 289 different communities and 30 organizations. So there really is a wealth of opportunity for you, whether you're interested in finance, in policy, in human resources, in marketing. There's lots of different things that you can do in the public service.
Amazing. That's really great to hear, Claire. And thanks for that wonderful introduction. All right. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Jacquilynne Ellison-Wickson, Talent Acquisition Manager at TD. Welcome.
Hello, my pleasure being here. Thanks so much. And I know my name's a bit of a mouthful, so you can call me Jackie, Jacquilynne. It's always one of those interesting things where with the spelling, but you can reach out to me with any of those variations or call me anything and I'll answer. But I have the privilege of leading the talent acquisition team for Western Canada for TD Bank for our retail branch banking area of our business. So everything basically at the branch is what my team hires for, from customer experience associates right up to the branch managers, and then our regional head office. We do all the hiring for our regional head office as well. So it's a fantastic opportunity to engage with people all over Western Canada. So I have a really large team and involved in a lot of really great initiatives. So really excited to have everybody learn a little bit more about TD, because banking is a really neat industry. I think a lot of people don't know how vast and diverse it is, but there's so many different areas that you can grow your career in, and there's a lot of complexity to banking. And if you're customer service minded or like helping people, it can be a really great fit. But as an organization, and we'll talk about this today, they do some really cool things. So amazing to be able to be on the side of that benefit, because you always feel like you're taken care of. We call it sort of an unexpectedly human place to work, which I think is really neat. So thank you. I've been with TD 3 years. I'm here in Calgary, Alberta. So I have the privilege of being able to, live and work in Calgary, but get to venture off to all the different areas within our beautiful country. So I'm really lucky to be able to have a strong network of people all throughout. And thanks so much for having me as well.
Fantastic introduction, and we're excited to learn more about TD's initiatives that you just hinted at. So we'll get to that over the course of our panel today. Thank you. So now that we've learned a bit more about our panelists and gotten to know them better, I've got a few of my own questions that I'm going to start us off with before we move over to our pitch events and our audience Q&A. So these next questions are geared more towards what's new at their companies, but for the last leg of 2022, before we move over to 2023, I can't believe it's the end of the year already. But I've also thrown in a couple questions around the topic of mentorship. So we'll start off with Claire. So BC Public Service, as you just mentioned, has over 35,000 regular and auxiliary employees. And this is according to the 2020 Where Ideas Work BC Public Service Corporate Plan. So this is a staggering number. It's huge. What are all the different departments and branches within the public service? I'm super curious to learn about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we definitely get asked that a lot when I'm out in community and meeting with folks. Because we're such a large organization, it would be impossible for me to go into all the different departments and branches, but I'll definitely give people sort of a feel of what it's like. So
Perfect.
The way that government is structured is we're structured into ministries. So you can sort of think about that as like themes. So when I'm talking to people who are looking to come into public service, sometimes they're overwhelmed by our job postings because at any time we have over 100 different postings up. And I always say to identify ministries that speak to your interests and your strengths, whether those are your professional or your personal strengths, and target your job search that way. So each ministry is responsible for a specific area of public policy, of government function, or of service delivery. And they're all focused on the lives of British Columbians. So all of our work looks at the impact on citizens and how we can best serve citizens. One of the really fun things about government, especially in, I would say, the last sort of decade or so, is we really have a very strong focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. I actually used to work on our equity, diversity, and inclusion team. And so one of the mandates that's common across all ministries, actually two, is really looking at diversification. So how can we make sure that the folks that are coming in are really reflective of the population that we serve and are from all different regions of BC. So not just Vancouver, Victoria. We really want to be able to have people work in their communities, not have to leave. And also reconciliation. That's another really important thing that you'll see as a thread for every role that you have in public service. And the way that ties into our ministries is each ministry has mandates, which are basically the goals set for them by the Premier. And the mandates that you'll see, and you can look them up when you're looking at ministry websites, will really reflect some of those key priorities. But the common goal, again, will be that serving of British Columbians. And right now, we just got a few new ministries because when it's like there's changes in government, we got new ministries. So we have a new ministry, I think, of housing, and we had water, land, and resource stewardship is the new one. It was land, water, and resource stewardship. So sometimes they're just small changes, but we have 23 ministries at the current moment. So everything from post-secondary education and future skills to public safety and solicitor general. So lots of different opportunities.
That's really interesting to know. I feel like I'm out of the loop sometime with what's going on, at the government level, but that's really interesting to know. It's like broken down to ministry. So that's something that we should all be keeping an eye on. So thank you for sharing that, Claire. My next question is for Allison. So Peloton Technologies is a Victoria-based fintech startup. In less than 1 year, your team has tripled in size and raised more than $1 million in capital, of which a portion was through equity crowdfunding. And you were also successful in securing a $500,000 through the, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Pacifican Business Scale-Up and Productivity Program. So tell us about your exciting new growth.
Oh my goodness. It's been a wild year. So when January 1st, we had 15 employees and we have 26 and a vacancy right now that we're hoping to have filled right away. So we've almost doubled in size in just this past year. So our tiny little HR team, which consists of me and one other person, we've been recruiting flat out for the past year. Recruiting and onboarding has our to-do list of everything else has been put aside, and that's what we've been working on. And so it's been very exciting. We're a fintech, as you mentioned, so financial technology for folks who are maybe not familiar with the phrase fintech. And basically what we provide is banking as a service. So for small and medium enterprises, to access banking when you're a small organization can be very difficult if you want to take credit card payments or if you want to take direct debits or anything like that. It can be very difficult. And I'm sure Jacquilynne can speak to that as well, what the challenge can be for customers is trying to navigate that payment process. So we make it really easy for folks. They come to us. We are PCI compliant to the highest standard. Jacquilynne, I think I might impress you with this. We've never had a data breach, possibly because no one's ever heard of us. I'm just kidding. But what it does is it lets folks come to us. So you've got a little shop, right? If you want to sell something online, you come to us and you know that you can process credit cards and not be worried that anything might happen to that credit card data because our security levels are so high. But in order to do that, that's the financial side, processing all of the payments. The tech side, of course, is our software developer team. And I saw a few people in the chat going, they're interested in moving into tech. And I'm like, ooh, hello. That caught my attention. So it's our developer team that has just grown and grown and grown over the past year. And that's the vacancy that we still need to fill. So as small and medium enterprises have realized what exactly is involved in processing payments, that's when they find us, and they're very excited that we can make it easy for them. But of course, it puts a big demand on us to produce our product and produce what they need. So that's about as short and sweet as I can make it. We make life easy for small and medium enterprises to manage those payments securely.
Love it.
Yeah. That's us.
Thanks so much for that great description of Peloton Technologies and what you guys do. And really exciting about your huge growth this year. That's no easy feat. All right, my next question's for Jacquilynne. So TD has almost 90,000 employees, according to LinkedIn, across Canada. What is TD most excited about for 2023?
Yeah. I was thinking about some of the great initiatives that we're doing, and that's kind of the really neat thing about TD is it's constantly changing and evolving. So there's always something cool and new coming up or going on. And, there's many ways I could answer this question because it's not just one thing that I think we're excited about. I think, we're really partnering with a lot of great programs. We have some new sponsorships and scholarship awards that we've launched from an early talent perspective that we're really excited about. From a recruitment perspective, what I'm personally most excited about is that we're increasing our vacation entitlement for all of our employees starting January 1st. So people who are coming into things like personal bankers or financial advisor roles get 4 weeks. People in the personal banking associate role or manager roles will be guaranteed 3 weeks. We're also increasing things like time away from work for personal health days. And these are all those new initiatives that I think, as organizations, when you talk about being a employer of choice or a people-oriented employer, those things really matter, is that time away and taking care of yourself and mentally recharging. So I love that TD is always evolving some of those give back opportunities. This past July, everybody in the organization got just a 3% increase just because. So I think on the horizon of the things that we have going on, it's constantly changing. From our team's ability around how we meet candidates, how we're recruiting, that's always evolving and changing, really doing a lot more things like this where we're opening up the doors for candidates to reach out if they're interested and have a conversation, and doing, on-the-spot interviews at career fairs as opposed to making people go all the way back through that process of applying online. We've all been there and got to wait for that call back. We want to engage with you immediately. And so, from an organization, and banking perspective, similar to Allison, like banking is sort of, it's a growth pattern. And so there's a lot of different trends of banking that are evolving, that the branches are continuing to really evolve. So, there's so much stuff that we're excited about, but it's just one thing. I think, that's the neat thing about a large organization is that there's a lot that can come to. Sometimes it's a matter of, choosing of what you down and what you do. But there's a lot of exciting things that happen at TD all the time, especially with our Ready commitment, getting in the communities, lots more volunteer opportunities. But I think there's just not one thing. I think we're just really excited for the new year. I'll just add, I think, the biggest challenge has been sort of, finding candidates in challenging markets. I'm sure Clare and Allison have also experienced this. And so I think just evolving our ties within community and doing some neat things out to meet people is going to be another thing that we're really looking forward to in the new year.
Fantastic. Well, more vacation time is always welcome, right?
Yes. And now that we can go back in person, I think that's also what I'm really excited about. It's less virtual, which is great. This is awesome, but more of that hands-on connecting that we haven't been able to do. So more events.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've got some amazing initiatives coming up. All right. My next question is for Right, it's for Clare. So the government is a well-known organization where employees can spend their entire career. What kinds of initiatives do you provide for career development at the BC Public Service?
Yeah, so there's a whole wealth of things that you could take advantage of as a public servant. One of the things that's been really popular for the last year or so, as we sort of moved through pandemic and folks were having a bit more time to focus on what they wanted from their life, but also from their career, has been temporary assignments. So what happens is that if you've worked with the public service for a certain amount of time, and it depends, I think, based on sort of if you're a permanent or auxiliary employee, but I'll talk about permanent. So,
Mhm.
and I'll use myself as an example. So, when I came back to public service, I had been in my role for 8 months, so not very long at all. Was really loving my role, was loving my team, and my manager was encouraging me to grow. They were saying, you need to move up, and I feel like I could facilitate that. Have you looked at any temporary appointments? And I hadn't. I thought, oh, I need to make this commitment for at least a couple of years and then move around.
Mhm.
But actually, after 6 months, you can start looking at temporary assignments if you're a permanent employee. And they're really great because it's basically a way to try out a role at a higher level, take on a new challenge, maybe learn something different, while still saving that base position. So I used to do a lot of contract work instead of sort of going to a contract and maybe not have anything lined up afterwards. At the end of my time on a TA, then I can either, stay in the team if I'm really enjoying it, if the opportunity opens up, or I can go back to my base position. So, I don't lose out on my salary and there isn't the uncertainty of being able to try something new. So lots of folks are doing that and really using that as a way to grow within public service. But there's lots of other things we have as well. So we have coaching services. If you sort of are looking more into that mentorship side of things, we have professional coaches that can work with you. We have leadership coaches, which is really cool. They help you to really grow in your career. They sort of give you different communication skills and coping tactics to really help you to develop as a leader while you're working. We've got career support services as well that help with career planning. They also help people with that transition into retirement or if they're taking early leaves, things like that. And then we've got scholarships. So we have a Pacific Leaders Program, and that can be relevant when you are a student, if you come in for a co-op, for instance, or if
Mhm.
you come in as an employee. So as a student, when we have co-ops come in, they come in about 4 times a year. They can
Mhm.
access up to $1,000 from the Pacific Leaders Program to help them pay for those work placements, because I know that there is a cost to doing the co-op program. And then as a public servant, you can also get scholarships and bursaries to help you pay for further education while you're working. So you can also access funds for your children if you're looking to fund your children's post-secondary. So, there's development of your career, but there can also
Mhm.
be development of others in your family. And then the last thing I'll touch on really quickly is our internship program. So
Mhm.
we get a lot of questions about internships, and we have 2 dedicated internships. One is for Indigenous youth. So it's the Indigenous Youth Internship Program. And the other one is Work Able, and that's for folks who identify as having a disability. And with both of
Mhm.
those programs, you need to be a recent graduate of a post-secondary program. And then it's folks who self-identify as being part of those groups.
Mhm.
And they work really nicely because you get a placement in public service where you're getting a salary and the benefits and exposure to working here. And then with the Indigenous Youth Internship, you also get time at an Indigenous organization as well, working there. And with Work Able, you'll be the 12 months with public service, and a lot of folks roll right into permanent work with public service from that experience. So there's lots of different ways that you can sort of career path, as we call it,
Mhm.
and grow. But the other thing that I want to say, because I know that it is important to some folks as well, is if you find a role that you really love and that you're really comfortable doing, you don't have to move. So we
Mhm.
also love when folks want to stay in a role. One of my colleagues has been on our team about 8 years and loves it and is really, a fundamental part of our knowledge transfer. And that's really important too. So it isn't that we're bringing you in and then immediately, making you move up. If you're comfortable where you are, there's opportunities to learn more and grow in your responsibility within the same role as well.
Wow, this is really cool. Just a follow-up question, for those co-op programs and internship programs that you mentioned, uh, are these for placements like across departments, or are there specific departments for these like co-op placements and internships?
Yeah, so the way that it works actually is every year we sort of send out call outs to different ministries saying, who can use a co-op student, who can use an intern. And then the ministries identify roles and sort of like pitch themselves in a way to the candidates. They get a package of jobs that they could apply to. So every year it changes what those opportunities are, but they are all across the public service. So you could have a communications role, you could have a finance role, you could have a role in policy. So there is every ministry will have opportunities, but every year they'll change based on the needs of the unit and the branches.
Fantastic. Well, that's really great to know about these programs. Thanks so much for sharing. Okay, my next question is for Allison. So Allison, I was on a podcast with your CEO earlier this fall with Craig, and he mentioned co-op programs to provide mentorship for junior talents. Can you tell me a bit about these programs, these co-op programs that you offer?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. For a small company, we hire a lot of co-op students. A little bit like Clare, but on a smaller scale. We go and we check out with the team and find out who has capacity, who has need for co-op students. We hire upwards of 9 co-op students in a year, which for a team that has only just hit 27 is a lot. Which is why having our team involved in the decision making is so important to us. To nobody's surprise, I'm sure most of our co-op positions sit in our software developer team. And that's where our mentorship program starts. We reach out to the development team to find out, first of all, do they have capacity to take on co-op students? If it's a particularly busy time, we may choose to do 1 co-op position instead of 2, for example. But our dev team almost never says no, which I think speaks very highly for them and also for our culture and the commitment to learning that we've got. So the dev team as a whole will say, yes, we have capacity. Yes, we want 1 or 2 co-op students. And then individuals will raise their hands to say, I would really like to mentor a co-op student this term. And so as soon as someone's raised their hand as a mentor, then they're very involved in our recruitment and selection process. Right, from like even making sure that our job posting is still as up to date as it needs to be, because I don't fully understand all the tech stuff. When the resumes come in, through the co-op boards at all the colleges and universities, sometimes there are things on them that I don't understand or our HR advisor doesn't understand. We've got some tech folks out there, this might resonate. I once received a resume and it said in all capital letters, I installed a Pi hole on a Raspberry Pi. And I'm an HR person. I have no idea what that means. So I copied and pasted that and popped it into Slack and sent it to the dev team and said, help, is this good? Is this bad? I don't know what this is. And the 2 members of the dev team who had volunteered to be mentors that term right away responded back and explained to me what it meant. It turns out it's a very good thing, but not that relevant to our dev team. It's very exciting. That's why it was in all caps. But that's what I mean by our dev team members being really involved in it. So they see the resumes, they help us do the final shortlisting, they see interview questions before we send them out to candidates, etc. So right through the whole process, they're on the panel. They meet the folks and then they decide, when we're down to our top candidates, who's going to be the best fit. Because I think Jacquilynne and Clare will certainly speak to this. Any mentorship program is only as successful as the partnership that's set up. That's where, so often where it falls apart. So having our dev team really heavily involved in that helps us ensure that we've got really good mentoring relationships built right from the beginning. And then our role as HR is to provide as much support or as little support as is needed to make sure that those mentorship relationships succeed. Tools, resources, you name it, whatever they need. But so often, because we've built the groundwork right from the very beginning, the partnerships really fly, and it's wonderful to watch. And folks come back and students refer their friends. So it's quite normal for us to have hundreds of applications for our co-op positions. Yes, which is a happy problem. But Ashley, my HR colleague, spends a lot of time getting the mountains of applications down to something manageable. So we're very, very proud of our co-op programs. And of course, they've provided a wonderful funnel for us because we hire many of our former co-op students.
Amazing. That's really great to hear. And so you mentioned it's for the co-op programs only for like the devs team, or do you have other departments that
actually grown?
Oh,
So initially, it was primarily for our software developers. Funny little story. That's actually how I got my job at Peloton when I moved to Victoria. I happened to be sitting across the table from our chief operating officer. And in the course of the conversation, he mentioned to me that he'd always wanted to hire a co-op student, but you need a job description in order to do that. And I wasn't working yet. And a day or so later, I thought, I could do that. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, would you like me to write your job description? And he said, sure. And look where we are 7 years later. So it started with our software developers. And the other thing that we really like to do with our software dev co-ops is we like first term co-op students. We like to get them when they're just at the beginning of their education process, and that's worked out really well for us. But in the last year or so, we've expanded to HR. The HR colleague that I mentioned, Ashley, came to me as a co-op student. Actually, someone I had taught at Camosun and then applied on my first ever HR co-op position and is now our full-time HR advisor and just knocking it out of the ballpark. And I believe lurking in our in the list of participants is our first marketing co-op, who's done such an amazing job that is staying with us for another co-op term. So we're a little bit the little engine that could, but we're really proud of our co-op program because it brings us wonderful people and helps us grow our team. And we really value learning, and it's a way that we can give some of that back as well.
That's so wonderful. And I see here in the chat, Diego's asked where to send in applications for co-op students. So maybe Claire and Allison, if you have links, feel free to pop them in the chat for Diego. Great question, Diego. All right. And thanks so much for answering my follow-up question. Last question for Jacquilynne today. What kind of professional growth opportunities, for example, like mentorship, does TD provide your junior and senior employees?
Yeah, this is also such a robust question because there's so many different areas you can do this. So similar to what Claire was mentioning, we have other things as well, similar to what she was mentioning around short-term assignments. So you can go and explore other areas, get in a short-term capacity just to learn and grow. And that's sort of the beauty of getting your foot in the door, whether that's part-time or in customer service, and, building your internal network is you can actually find a lot of those internal only jobs that we only post to our current employees where you can navigate some of those areas of interest. So we also have a really robust co-op program as well, but we actually have this really neat associate program where you can go and spend some time in each department within HR or each department within tech and kind of experience different areas. And that's a full associate program to really get that full learning. But in terms of mentorship, TD does a lot of really neat things. So that could be like a one-on-one partnership, group activities. We actually have a formal program where you can sign up as a mentee, and then if you want a mentor. So we circle and cycle this through a bunch of individuals who are interested, because I think it's really important. Like, people just don't know where to find a mentor. So having a formalized program, these are already individuals who say like, hey, I'd really love to mentor somebody. So it's a vetting system. We make sure that people have the right credentials and commitment, because nobody wants to, book a time with a mentor for some one-on-one, and then that person has no time to really commit to that requirement. So we also have things like our community pillars that we're involved in. So sometimes there's informal mentorships where you could be part of our Visman pillar, maybe you're part of the Indigenous community or women in leadership, where you can do some mentoring just through some of those group activities. So I've had the pleasure of meeting with people who are interested in talent through some of those engagements, just really coming in as an industry expert and talking about different opportunities. So sometimes it doesn't have to be that one connection. It could be more on a group, but that's what's great is for anybody who's looking to join an organization, see what social committees there are, see what, different volunteer opportunities there are, because you can find mentors just through those simple interactions as well. But, TD does have a few formal mentorship, but also, a lot of our leaders are always open for just a coffee connect. So if it's not a formal network, maybe it's a sponsorship where you're looking to have somebody sort of sponsor you throughout your career who wants, to help with your development, because there is a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So TD does do sort of both formal programs where, we have a few different options. So it's really endless in terms of the possibilities to connect with the right people.
Fantastic. Well, that's great to hear that you have all these initiatives, wonderful sounding initiatives over at TD. And if you have any links for these initiatives, feel free to pop them in the chat, Jacquilynne, so that our candidates today can check them out and peruse all the options available to them. All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all of my burning questions and letting me pick your brain about your wonderful organizations. I'm going to move over our panel now into our next segment, which is the pitch event. So I'll just give a brief background on the pitch event and some instructions. So the pitch event is a 30-second pitch for our lovely speakers today, and you can talk about, for example, your work history, if you're a student, what you're studying, and what your career, hopes and dreams are. You can talk about some skill sets that you have, maybe languages that you speak, or if you're in tech, you can tell us about the tech languages. You can tell us about, if you worked abroad, your career trajectory. If you're looking to, for example, transition and change your career, you can pitch that as well. So to nominate yourself for joining our pitch event today, you can, in the chat here, I'm just going to pop the basic instructions into the chat. You can put your name, location, and industry, and I'm just going to pick who comes first. So it's first come, first serve. The first 3 people to nominate themselves in the chat, I will choose, and you will join us on screen. Pitch yourself to our panelists here. And after the event today, I will send you an email inviting you to a resume consultation with BC Jobs. So there is an incentive. You get a little prize at the end for, speaking up. I know it's not an easy thing to speak in front of a group. We've got 33 people today. So all right. Okay, we've got our first brave soul. So let's hear it, Sylvie. Feel free to come on screen and mute yourself. Oh, actually, one more thing before we start with Sylvie's pitch. I should have mentioned this way back at the beginning. If anyone needs closed captioning, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots, it will say caption. So if you click on that, you'll be able to see a running script of our event today. Sorry about that. I should have mentioned that ages ago. I saw somebody enabled it earlier, and that reminded me that I needed to mention it. So sorry for that. And Sylvie, looking forward to hearing your pitch.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me properly first?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. So my name is Sylvie Lacoque. Just first of all, before I start with the pitch, I just want to say really thank you, Chelsea, for organizing this. And thank you for the 3 panelists for, taking time out of your days to do this. It's been really awesome to hear about what each company is doing.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Okay, so about me. So I am a bilingual French and English full stack developer. I pivoted from a career in sales and business development. So I am currently based in Vancouver, and I recently graduated from the Lighthouse Labs bootcamp. And I'm super excited to apply my new programming skills in a professional setting. So after those several intensive months of bootcamp, I know that I am a very fast learner. I can pick up new technologies very quickly. I also consider myself to be highly flexible, highly adaptable. A fun fact about me is that I lived in 6 different countries all around the world. So I've worked with a lot of different cultures and in a lot of different work environments. So I'm currently looking for a role as a full stack web developer. And I'm hoping that my future company will allow me to continue doing what I'm passionate about, which is coding, creating apps that impact positively the client.
Fantastic pitch, Sylvie. Thanks for being the first brave soul to speak up today. And maybe I'll pass you over to Allison. Maybe, Allison, you've got a follow-up question since Sylvie's in tech.
Oh my goodness. I have lots of things I would like to ask. I want to ask Sylvie what 6 countries she's lived in. I have so many questions. Let's start with the easy one. What 6 countries have you lived in?
So France, obviously, that's where I was born. And then I've been to Sweden, China, South Korea, Hong Kong, and now Canada.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Very cool.
Okay, and tell me what it is that makes you excited about coding.
I just love the fact that I'm creating something with my own hands, and I can see people using what I've created after. I can see how I'm coding solutions that are actually helping people in their day-to-day lives.
That's very cool. That's sort of how I feel about HR. If I do my job right, I make other people's lives easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes, that makes a ton of sense. Well, I don't want to monopolize Sylvie. I could.
It's always It's always great to meet another Lighthouse Labs bootcamp graduate. I've met several of your classmates over the past year, and everybody's been super wonderful. So thank you for your great pitch. Yeah, great program.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other brave souls today who want to pitch themselves to our panelists? All right. Well, I don't see, I guess everybody's a little nervous. We've got, the government here today, and big bank, and Peloton, not the bike, the technologies. All right. If anyone else, will take 2 more pitch candidates today. So, okay, Hitendra. All right, we've got a brave soul here. All right, Hitendra, I'll let you unmute yourself, and the floor is all yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this wonderful get-together where we are given an opportunity to pitch ourselves. Of course, my name is Hitendra Lakra, and I'm a recent graduate from Global Supply Chain Management and International Trade. This particular program also had an opportunity where we can put ourselves together to have accreditation, which is Certified International Trade Professional from which is also called as CITP. Of course, I have 20 years of pharmaceutical manufacturing and pharmaceutical industry experience, but I'm trying to get away from, not away from the entire trade, but trying to go into the segment of pharmaceuticals which I have not explored in my life, and which is the supply chain management. So supply chain and the international trade. Definitely, I'm looking forward for very not only focus, but a new adventure into the supply chain, not only limited to logistics, but also to the electronic supply chain management, which some of the industries have very, very precise management of this particular industry. For example, like I'm not sure, but I'm just thinking that Peloton might be having a supply chain management for the electronic segment. It's a very fine line of the supply chain. I would love to know and learn about this part of the industry, but not everybody offers that. So yes, I am looking for an opportunity to work into the supply chain industry and in the international trade, because I got certification for the Certified International Trade Professional. Mm-hmm. During this course, I also learned a very good thing about the cultural aspect of the entire supply chain, which matters a lot into this industry. If you're supplying something to Japan, or if you're supplying something to Europe, or somebody from, for example, like if somebody from India is trying to ship something to Japan, they are not only shipping something, a commodity or an item, but they're also shipping the cultural aspect too. So you got to know it's a two-way trading. You're giving a product, but also you're bringing in the culture. So this is something about the beauty of the supply chain. So of course, I'm Hitendra Lakra, and if somebody has an opportunity, please reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your pitch, Hitendra. And since you mentioned you were in your interest in supply chain, right? Maybe Claire's got a follow-up question for you. I don't know if there's rules like that in the government, but you can ask another follow-up question.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in a unique situation where with public service, all of our hiring is done based on principles of merit. So we can only hire folks if they apply on our website, and there's certain steps that they go through. But sort of my question for you, though, my follow-up is, would you be interested in a role that sort of marries those two interests, like maybe something in policy, for instance? I'm thinking of our Ministry of Health. and also the work that's being done on mental health and addictions, there's a lot of roles that really need someone with a strong pharmaceutical background, but who can look at the sort of bigger picture and how the policies can really relate to folks on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just wondering if you're interested in maybe seeing how those skills could transfer to different areas.
Oh, that is a perfect fit for me actually, because my in-depth knowledge about the pharmaceuticals, and I have worked as a pharmacy assistant for almost 18 years in pharmacies, especially the long-term care benefits where the patients are living in the nursing home, and they have seen the day-to-day challenges they have, and at some point, I was even training the nurses on the technology side, and that's where I understood the nursing home aspect, where they are having the challenges, and the social workers and all those different workforce people are attached to the healthcare system of British Columbia. So definitely, I'm very much interested to know about this. And if I get qualified, then definitely I would like to work for the beautiful British Columbia.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for your pitch today, Hitendra. All right, we've got our last pitch candidate, Lawrence. Lawrence, you want to come on screen and unmute yourself, and we're looking forward to hearing your pitch.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
A little pitch about myself. I'm also a recent Lighthouse Lab graduate. I graduated in November, I believe, which is the cohort right before yours, Sylvie. So I know exactly how you feel and what you went through. I was a previous employee of TD. I used to work as a financial advisor for about a few years, but decided to make a change into the tech industry because, very similar to Sylvie, it's something that I was passionate about. And that the best thing that I liked about TD was that when I was doing my role, I was helping people day to day. Every single appointment, I was making an impact. And doing the coding, it's making an impact more on a global and more of a macro scale, which is why I'm very excited to make that change. I have two questions, if that's okay, for our panelists here today before they ask me the question. Unless they want to ask first, I'm okay with that. But I do have two questions lined up.
Okay, well, hang on to those questions because this is just our pitch event. So if you're maybe done pitching about yourself, maybe I'll pass you over to Jacquilynne, and if she's got a follow-up question for you, because maybe your transition from your TD role into a tech role might also be applicable to TD.
That was one other question.
Yeah. Okay, all right then.
Yeah. Certainly, Lawrence, if you can just maybe elaborate a little bit around like your formal education or any hands-on experience that you've recently had that will just transition really well into the tech. Just wanted to kind of understand a bit more about some of the things that you've done from a self-education perspective to move into tech.
Aside from the boot camp, I only took a few intro to computer science courses back in university. My major back then was economics, which is why I went to the banking industry. But aside from Lighthouse, no, that's the only education I had in the tech field.
Awesome. And have you looked or explored, is that something on your pathway that you would be interested in looking back in terms of co-op, like going back in further, like with further education?
I think if it eventually comes to it, I would be down to do the co-op. But I felt like the reason I took the boot camp was the major reason for boot camps is this time frame, right? It's only 3 months, whereas a university degree usually takes a little bit longer than that. And the pro-op programs I know would be very, very helpful. But at the moment, probably no. But in the future, definitely not going to say no to that.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thanks, Jacquilynne.
All right. Well, thank you for your pitch today, Lawrence. Does anyone else have a follow-up question for Lawrence before I move over into general questions? All right. And Lawrence, you mentioned you have one more question. So what I'll do is I'll open up the floor now to general Q&A from our audience. Thank you so much for our 3 pitch candidates, Sylvie, Hitendra, and Lawrence, for pitching yourselves. You guys are very brave. Well done. And keep an eye on your email inbox for an invitation from me for a resume consultation with BC Jobs. So yeah, we'll move over into our Q&A. we'll go with Lawrence's question first, and then I'm just going to go back up through the chat and see if there is any questions that I missed. But if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand. The raise hand feature is at the bottom under the reaction symbol. So there's a little smiley face. And if you click on that, there is a raise hand feature. You can also type your question into your chat if you're unable to talk today. Yeah, so let's start with Lawrence. Did you have one more question, or were you finished with your questions?
It's a pretty general question.
Okay.
I know a lot of the hiring is based around co-op programs. And I was just wondering whether or not there could be any opportunities kind of for other type of education programs like boot camps to transition. That's it. That's the basic question.
Okay, and is your question geared towards all three panelists, or is your question
I guess more
like
for
service or
more for Clare and Allison? I think
Okay.
Jacquilynne's was
Perfect. So I'll hand over to whoever wants to go first. Rock, paper, scissors.
I can jump in.
Sure.
Lawrence, I'm going to give you the terrible HR answer, which is it depends. Just the HR answer to everything. We do a lot of our hiring through co-op because we have a really clear understanding of where folks are at in their learning journey. But we did just hire somebody in the summer who came through a very non-traditional path with their learning, and they've been a stellar addition to our team. So sometimes, yes, that's the best I've got. Sometimes, yes, it never hurts to reach out. Yeah, the hiring that happened in the summer, this wonderful person, very much a non-traditional path, and they're wonderful. We're so glad to have them as a member of our team. So keep trying, I guess would be my message there.
Thank you, Allison.
Clare, what would you add to that?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the great things about public service is we're really trying to be more equitable in the way we hire. So what that means is that we're no longer just looking for those traditional degrees. We'll look for equivalencies, and we'll look for different types of experience. So when you're looking at a job posting, I would really encourage you to look at ones that say, X degree and certain amount of experience, or whenever it says or, we'll also take other equivalencies, which is really great. Another thing that could work in your favor is that we look at everybody for their knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's how you get assessed for a public service job. So it'll be really clear with our job postings. When you go to a posting at the bottom, there'll be a PDF. It's called a job profile, and that'll tell you way more about what you'd be doing in the role, the kinds of work, who you might be reporting to, but also the competencies and the skills that we're looking for. So if you can really clearly show how you have those knowledge, skills, and abilities, then that is what makes you a successful applicant, because everyone in that competition is going to be scored on the same things. And so it's all about how you show those knowledge, skills, and abilities that will really set you up for success. So basically, it's also an it depends, but what's nice is that we have that flexibility that we will take people from many different types of streams coming in now.
It's awesome. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Great questions. All right. I see that, Liz, you've got your hand raised. Feel free to pop your camera on and unmute your microphone and ask your question. And then I'll go over to Elle in the chat next, and then over to Joanne. So I'll go in that order for now. So
perfect.
welcome,
Thank
Liz.
you. Thank you, Chelsea. It's nice to be back. I think my camera's on. It says it's on, so I hope it's on. Also, thank you to the panel. It's been really informative. I've really enjoyed what you've been sharing. This one is directed for Clare. At the beginning of the call, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned about having a workshop or a meeting where you will provide a little bit of advice to applicants on how to best format information so that it gets to you correctly. Could you provide me with more details on that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a new initiative that we've been running since June, and it really gives you even a little bit more. So the first 30 minutes of the presentation is me letting you know about what it means to be a public servant, more about, our structure and what that life is like and our benefits, things like that. But then we really get into things like our hiring principles of what an application is going to look like, and really walk you through what you're going to need to bring to the application process. So that's, how to answer our questionnaires. What are these competencies that we keep talking about? We hire based on behavioral competencies. We also get into interviews, and we have some really great videos that we've made that give you hiring tips. So it really shows you how to answer with using something called STAR method, which really walks you through all of the different ways that you can handle the situation, and you can show your strength so that we can really, score you as high as possible. So it gives you a real, hopefully well-rounded experience of what it's like to apply to public service, and then also demystifies what we're looking for. So I'd be happy to put some information in the chat. I'll put information in for those videos, but also the presentations. And the other thing that I'll say is that in the new year, I'm moving into phase 2 of this offering. So we're going to start having public servants join as well, because there is half an hour where you can ask any questions that you might have. And people have really great questions from just their experience applying or things they've come up against. But soon I'm hoping to have, for instance, policy folks, or a different one about some of the finance roles. So where we have sort of high demand in our hiring, we're going to start really showcasing that in these conversations.
Oh, I would love that information. Can I just ask you one more in terms of remote possibilities with the service? Because I do see a lot of, say, for instance, the analyst, policy analyst roles are out of Victoria. Does it mean relocation is necessary, or is there the opportunity for remote work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that it's working at the moment is that most ministries will have some kind of a telework option that you can work with your supervisor. And it's all about what the operational needs are for that unit. And so telework is a little bit different than remote work. So if you're seeing a role that says Victoria and it doesn't list multiple locations, for instance, then that role might likely be in Victoria. But we are working to have more opportunities, especially in policy, that aren't so tied to one particular area. But I will say that with telework agreements, you can probably expect either 2 or 3 days at home. So for myself, I work 2 days in the office and I work 3 days at home. And I have colleagues in Vancouver. I have colleagues in Kamloops. So, I've got colleagues all over the place, which is really nice. And it just depends on that division and that unit. So if you're really interested in policy, I would say keep your eye out for some of these roles that have that multiple locations, because then as long as you're somewhere in BC, you shouldn't have to relocate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Great question, Liz. I see in the chat, we've got a question from Elle. Elle, are you still here? Did you want to jump on screen and unmute yourself and ask your question to our speakers? And then I'll come back to Joanne's question, who's waiting so patiently. All right, maybe Elle left. I'll read out the. Oh, you're here? Perfect.
No, it's Jackie. I was just
sorry.
Mention, okay.
I was looking above.
Just in case Elle might not be coming on screen. In terms of a complete career change, there's many organizations that are considered more entry level, like TD. We have our customer experience associate role, our contact center positions, and though they don't require a lot of different experiences. If you're doing a complete job change, you obviously have some great skills that you're already bringing. It's just a matter of how you put that together in maybe a cover letter, or how you describe sort of why you're looking for that change. But look for those really good entry level points to get your foot in the door, because your previous experience will matter. But if it's completely different, just looking to see what those requirements are. I know that Claire mentioned very similar things, like there's things that are must-haves in certain job descriptions, but there's things that equivalent experience will also come into play. So I think it's just reading through the job descriptions on where is that good entry point for you. It doesn't have to be a co-op. It could be just more of a more junior entry level position. But don't be afraid to apply for something that you're really interested in, but maybe do that extra of putting together a cover letter around the why. So that I just wanted to make a point on that.
Those are really great tips. And just so everyone knows, I'll read out the question because maybe Allison or Claire have some more tips that they would like to add. So what do you recommend for a complete career change for someone who has no previous experience? So Jacquilynne just laid out some really great tips, but maybe Allison or Claire, you want to add on other tips that you can think of for our candidates today?
I'd add one thing. So one of the things I would say is look for something called growth roles. So in public service, we're opening up more growth roles. So you might start out in a more junior level, but there'll be mentorship for you, and there'll be a real trajectory that you'll be on to move up into a higher position. And then same as Jackie was saying, some of the entry level positions for public service are usually clerk 9, clerk 11. If you're sort of mid-career professional and you have experience somewhere else but transferable skills, I would say look at the low 20s, so the 21s, things like that. And then you can get in and move around with those temporary assignments like I was talking about, or move into a different position. But yeah, there are usually lots of opportunities to sort of come in and then build skills and move around.
Fantastic. Allison, did you have anything you want to add on to what Jacquilynne and Claire just said?
I would add one little bit. First, I would obviously echo everything that Jackie and Claire said, and I would strongly encourage folks to look at public service. I worked in public service for 6 years, and as an HR professional, it was a fantastic environment to learn a whole bunch of different areas. You know, Claire was talking about different ministries, do HR work, but in a variety of different environments. So, you know, Claire mentioned policy earlier. Like, public service is a fantastic place to work. I mean, I'm trying to steer people away from my own organization, but public service is a really exceptional place to work. The other thing that I would suggest for folks who are looking at career changes is the big organizations are fantastic, you know, and Claire and Jackie talks about really great options that are there. Something that's, I think, potentially gets overlooked, and I'm going to speak specific to Victoria. If you look at the employment market in Victoria, and I might have this stat not 100% right, but if you remove the big employers in Victoria, you take out the provincial government, the health authority, BC Ferries, et cetera, there's 4 or 5 really big employers. You remove those, the average size of the employer is under 50 employees, 50. So if you're looking for a career change, there's all kinds of small companies, small and medium enterprises, where somebody with transferable skills and really neat experiences might get to wear a bunch of different hats and try some really neat new things, right? So don't forget to look at the small organizations, get out there and do that networking, right? The job boards are wonderful, you know, like all of it's fantastic. This is a yes and answer. Do all the things that Jackie and Claire said, but also talk to people, you know, find out there's some really fascinating companies and jobs. There's 2 little companies here in Victoria that I'm familiar with. One is Rockland Scientific, which produces tiny little instruments that measure climate, that help measure climate change. They measure ocean turbulence. They have 25 employees and they manufacture these instruments in Victoria.
Wow.
And they're a key part of climate change science. But if you're not in that industry, how would you know they exist? There's also a little company called Delta X Research, and they work in the electrical industry. And they help make sure the electrical transformers work properly. They're how our power grid works properly. A very small piece of it. They have, I believe, 13 employees.
Wow.
So there are some really amazing small businesses that are here. So look for those, talk to people, find out what they do. There's incredible stuff happening.
And there's a growing tech industry in Victoria. It's the new tech city in BC.
Yeah. So look at it all, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't limit your options. Look at everything.
Yeah.
Great tips on career development. Oh, sorry, Jackie.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to mention, to piggyback on what Allison said, there's also a lot of contact centers now popping up in the island in places like Nanaimo and a little bit in more of the smaller communities where they're always struggling to find talent. So if you're open to sort of those more kind of remote areas, or, you know, just again, stepping out of your comfort zone into a totally different industry, if something intrigues you, go to the company's LinkedIn page and start to follow them, because that's where you'll start to get those insights. And maybe that advantage, if they're hiring, you'll get to maybe get that a little bit quicker than the web page, just checking job boards.
Great tips on how to transition your career. Thank you. Joanne, you've been waiting so patiently. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. And please let us know if your question is directed to one speaker or to all 3.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. And no worries, lots of great learning and listening to other people's responses and the questions that are being asked. So thank you for that. My first question, actually, I have 2, if that's okay. My first question goes to Allison and Jacquilynne. It's been really great to hear that there is like an open flexibility, looking at different backgrounds, et cetera. I'm also understanding that it's important for people to fill the competencies for the roles that are being targeted and focused on. My question is, how do you perceive international experience and folks that are coming in as internationally trained professionals that may not have the work experience here in Canada, but have extensive experience in their home countries? Software development, obviously, some of the systems analysts, these types of roles.
Mm-hmm. I don't mind taking that first, Allison, and then I'd love to hear your perspective. But, and I think that there's a group chat with a similar question around newcomers. TD's stance is that we're very open to bringing people on with lots of different backgrounds. And I think there's a huge misconception that you have to have Canadian experience to be considered, or you need to go gain a bunch of experience to then be considered. That to us doesn't matter. We value that experience, and there's a lot of really great transferable skills. It might mean, looking at something that can get you to gain some of that footprint within the Canadian market and just enhance that experience, but you don't need to have Canadian experience to get a job, especially with TD. So, we're always open. We do a lot of these info sessions. We're out at career fairs, and, we want to have people that come from lots of different backgrounds, those skills, those languages, that, again, those disciplines are hard to find. So we welcome them. So for anybody who might be, worried about that, we're very, very open to all of those experiences. But I think it's just a matter of making sure that you're connecting, coming to these great virtual events, signing up for, different mentorships through some of your local community organizations. They work with a lot of us, and we always ask for them to send us resumes. So the more people that we have engaging, the better, but you don't have to, long story short, you don't have to, feel like you have to downplay your experience to get a job in an area that you're not interested in. We do value that.
And I would echo exactly what Jackie's saying. International experience, fantastic. The more diversity of experience we can add to our team, the better. Two of the software developers we added to our team this year, one is from Brazil, the other is from Argentina, and they're actually working in those countries still. It's made the World Cup a bit of a challenge, because I think I, for a while, had 5 teams that I had to cheer for. I think it was Australia, Poland, Argentina, Brazil, and Canada, of course. And now we're down to just Argentina, because that's the only one who's left. But yeah, the international experience, it's fantastic. So much of it is transferable. The one thing that I noticed, and knowing that folks are wanting to sell themselves really well, and I don't really like that word sell, but don't be shy in what you put on your resume and your cover letter. I think, Jacquilynne, I hope I'm not misquoting here. I think you said, don't downplay yourself.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Say all the great experience that you've had. Yeah. Don't hesitate. Your resume, your interview, a friend of mine once said, it's the one time you have a whole hour to brag about yourself, right? You got an hour to sit there and say, this is how great I am. Let me tell you how great I am in a job interview. So, or like on paper in your resume, do that. Right? We want to hear how fantastic you are. So fill us in.
Yeah, and if you have those gaps, don't be afraid to call it out in a section in your resume. Sometimes people think, I'm just going to leave it off, or I don't know how to tell this story. Like, it's okay to include some of that, or, be able to describe that, put that, I always say it's the elephant in the room around, what were you doing between this time and this time? If it meant that you were, moving, or you were going through a different transition, that's okay. Just don't leave those blanks for interpretation. I'd say be transparent, be honest, like Allison, and I think we were both in agreement, be true to yourself, because that experience is rich. You are who you are because of that. So it's amazing to be able to showcase that. So don't downplay it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, ladies. I appreciate your enthusiasm in response to that as well. So thank you for that. I'm sure that many people on the call that are newcomers are feeling pretty jazzed right now. So my next question is to Clare. And Clare, specifically, I wanted to ask a very similar question as it relates to your regulated and non-regulated positions within. I'd love to hear just sort of how you approach international applicants that are, residents here in Canada, but majority of their background is built through an international experience. Is there a different approach to regulated and non-regulated professions? And if there is, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. And just to clarify, when you say regulated, do you mean like permanent work versus auxiliary work?
I mean, like an engineer versus a marketing person.
Oh, okay, great. Gotcha. Yeah. So to really echo what everyone else has said, it's really important to us to have that diversity of opinions and approaches and knowledge. And it really is what gives us strength as a public service. What I would say is that we are really encouraging people to show all of their experience. And when it comes to more regulated areas, there are some roles that are going to need you to either what's the easiest way of saying this? They're going to ask you to be able to show that you are eligible to be registered. So like with the engineers and geoscientists BC, you are going to need to be a registered engineer to get certain engineering jobs in public service, for instance. But if you can show that you have that equivalency, or that you can get your registration, then you'll be able to apply for the role. And it usually is really clear in the requirements. They will say, eligible for registration with, for instance. And then with non-regulated roles, so yeah, with like things like marketing or communications, policy work, a lot of the times they will say or equivalent. That gets in there again. And I would say it's quite rare that we wouldn't recognize, or not even wouldn't recognize, that we wouldn't recognize a degree from somewhere else. So for instance, my master's degree is from the United Kingdom, and that was easily accepted. I didn't have to show any equivalencies. If there is a role where they really need to evaluate where you got your experience from, it will be clear. And there are ways for you to be able to show that, you have basically accredited knowledge. So I would say also the other thing is, because each role is so specific and different, the best thing to do is to always talk to the person who's listed as the contact on the role. So there's always a hiring manager listed, and their email address will be there. And so you can reach out directly to them before you apply, or as you're going through the application, to ask about your specific situation. But definitely don't be discouraged to not apply for a position.
Oh, Joanne, you're on mute.
Yeah, no worries. Great. Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions, Joanne. And I believe our next question from Karna is pretty similar to the question Joanne just asked. Karna, do you have another question that you want to ask our panelists? Because I believe your question was around integrating newcomers into the environment in BC and within the workforce. So did you have another question that you wanted to ask our panelists, or I'll leave that open. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that one. Diego had a question, which I think we could just quickly answer here. Does Peloton and TD participate in job fairs? Where and when? Great question. I mean, BC Jobs has a career fair coming up in February. Peloton and TD haven't signed up yet, but maybe Peloton, you participate in career fairs on the island. Vancouver's a little far to come, trekking all the way over on the ferry.
We haven't done a ton of job fairs because we don't have a lot of me. But now that I have my wonderful HR colleague, Ashley, we're looking at doing more of them. This variety works really great. So we'll do more of this, hopefully. But yeah, we haven't done a ton of job fairs in the past, but that's not to say we won't in the future.
Yeah. And TD, we're out all the time. You can catch us at post-secondary schools. We do a lot with great partners like BC Jobs and Work BC. And so, but feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. So that's sort of my invitation to all of you. If you want to connect with me, I can let you know when those events are, or if you're interested in, not even having to go through an event and still engaging with my team in some capacity, I always welcome a LinkedIn Connect. So you can find me on there if you like, but we're always out and about. And, go to Eventbrite. There's a lot of stuff that we advertise on there. LinkedIn, go follow us. Again, you can connect. If we're out and doing lots of different things, we'll probably advertise that we're out. So, if you're interested in a company, again, we'll keep stating this. Go to the LinkedIn page and follow that company, because honestly, you'll be in the know, and then you can follow, and then you can build your network.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that info. I guess maybe we'll take our last question for today from Alex. Alex, you've been waiting so patiently. If you want to throw your camera on and unmute yourself, go for it. We're looking forward to your question.
Hey, hi everybody. Thanks very much for coming in and talking with us today. It's very much appreciated. I'm Alex, another Lighthouse Labs grad. I was in the same cohort as Sylvie, actually, and very good to see us representing. My question was specifically for Clare. kind of one of my biggest passions moving into software development was environmental conservation. I come from a conservation background. I was a wildlife management officer with a falconry company. And kind of my main, I know, weird. One of my question is related to kind of lateral movement within the BC Public Service. There are a lot of jobs with things like the Ministry of Forests and climate change that match my sort of beyond the skills that I've learned going through Lighthouse Labs. It matches a lot of my experience in the past. And while I would love to immediately move into tech, it can be a bit of a hard industry to get into right now. Things are a little crazy. So I'm interested in, like if I, for example, if I became a park ranger, it's kind of one of the things that pops up. Are there opportunities for, and I'm working on the side on my own projects, whatever, are there opportunities for lateral movement within the public service, like moving from, hey, I'm a park ranger now, oh, actually, I want to be a web developer in some way, or moving into a more tech related position? Is that a thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yes, it is totally a thing. So on our current team, we've really been sort of expanding right now. One of our coworkers, Dana, came in at a admin level because she wanted to get into public service. She just graduated from her marketing program. And then she was interested in making one of those strategic moves, like you've said. And in under a year, she's moved into being our marketing coordinator. So it's definitely a possibility. And that was because she identified that interest and was really starting to show her skills. One of the things that you can explore if you come in, say, as a park ranger, but want to move on to something different, is you can explore job shadowing. So you can ask to job shadow somebody in a role that you would like to do. And that can look like a whole bunch of different things, but usually it is actually getting involved in some of the work that they're doing to really help you sort of pad out your resume with some more of that relevant experience so that you can move over. The other thing that I will say is, for public service, we are in a real hiring push for people with tech skills. So, if you come out of somewhere like Lighthouse Labs and other places, we are looking for that kind of talent, everything from, your Scrum Masters to your developers. So I would say definitely keep looking, but I think it's a good strategic approach to start somewhere that you already have a lot of strong skills and move over. The other thing that I would say is that really look at the full job posting and not just the title, because I'm thinking of my sister-in-law. She works in environment and climate change strategy. And she actually works overseeing a team that develops apps all about environmentalism and how we can have less of an impact with the different productions we're doing and things like that. So there's all these like niche roles that you don't always think of. The other thing that I would say to folks interested in tech is we have, and of course now I'm blanking on their name, but we have innovation hubs in different ministries, and innovation hubs usually are another great place if you are looking to apply your tech skills in a way that actually, helps citizens and informs policy and programs.
Hey, that's awesome. That's a bunch of great information. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Great question, Alex. And on that note, I'm going to start to wrap up this panel today. So, thank you for all the very great and interesting questions we've had from our audience. And thank you so much to our panelists who have, made time for this panel today. And maybe what we'll do is I'll pass it over to, maybe we'll start off with Clare, go alphabetically from BC Public Service. And if you have any, words of wisdom, job candidate tips, any thoughts you want to share, I'll hand it over to you. This will be your chance to get in anything else you wanted to add or say today. So I'll pass it over to Clare, then Allison, then Jackie.
Awesome. There's always a wealth of things I want to tell people, but the thing I tell people most often is if you forget everything else that I've said, remember that you need to be painfully obvious on your application. So when applying to public service, it's very different than applying to private sector. For myself, even, I had to keep applying and learn the dance of it all. So it isn't really about weaving the narrative of who you are as a whole person. It's about really clearly showing knowledge, skills, and abilities. So if you put together an application, you think, oh, this is like painfully obvious, they're obviously going to be able to connect the dots, you're on the right track. It's when you think, oh, people will, just know that this and this connect, or that I clearly have this skill because I worked on this project. That's where we unfortunately aren't able to screen folks in. So if you remember nothing else, just remember painfully obvious with your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And with that, I'll move it on to Allison.
Yes, I remember screening competitions in public service, looking for painfully obvious. Claire's absolutely right. We're not quite so painfully obvious when you're applying to Peloton. We do need folks to make it clear. So what I would suggest for folks looking for jobs at small and medium enterprises like us, customize your resume and your cover letter. Nothing makes me shake my head more than when the date is changed and the dear so-and-so is changed and everything else is identical. And you can just tell that it's the same cover letter that's been sent out. Have, like Claire was saying, have a look at what's in that job posting and then explain to us how you have all those wonderful knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience. Take those 10 minutes. And if you're not sure, give it to someone else to read it. Is it clear? My running joke as an HR person is that we spend most of our lives doing a job where we know nothing about most of what we're doing, right? Because we can't learn all the jobs inside out and backwards. So that was what I was saying earlier about the install the pie hole on a Raspberry Pi. I have no idea what that meant. So help us know what it is you're trying to tell us. Because if it's an HR person who's going to be screening that resume, help us know how that connects to the job posting that you're looking at. So not quite to the degree that public service needs it, and I totally understand why Claire needs it to that degree, but show who you are, right? And customize it for the job. And then you're so much closer to getting through the door. And with that, I will hand it over to Jackie.
Great tips.
That's such a good tip. Both you and Claire, I mean, I'm learning stuff from you both. So I'd have three really quick ones. Similar to what Allison said, be intentional and be authentic when you're reaching out, especially on LinkedIn. I get a lot of, connections where people have not read my profile and it's not anything related to what I do. And so I feel bad having to say, sorry, like, I'm not the right person. So just go through research when you're reaching out and connecting. We do want to chat with you, but you want to make sure that you're authentic in your approach. So don't have that same copy and paste in the message either, similar to the cover letter. My next one is no does not mean not right now. It just means new opportunities. So sometimes you have to just take a little bit of those rejections and that feedback, and it's tough, but ask for that feedback and see what you can learn, what you need to do differently. And then similar to what Claire is saying about, the intentionality, is make sure that you have the right keywords in your resume and that it's obvious. Because even in banking, and a lot of the way that recruiters search is we're looking for those keywords that tie you back to that role that we're looking for. So think of it as like a Google. If you Googled yourself with those keywords on your resume for this job, would you appear? Would you come up? So build your resume based on those fundamentals. Make sure you don't leave the really juicy stuff off your resume and put it all in your cover letter, vice versa. Have a good balance and do a lot of different things in your job search, and you'll find that right path. You will. But it could take a few different approaches to get there. I think that was more than three, but sorry, I give you a bonus.
No, love it. These are all super valuable tips. And yeah, I know like with building a resume or a cover letter, sometimes it's really hard talking about yourself and, shouting out, I've done this. And you want to, tend to, like, if you're like myself, I tend to be a bit more modest, but, with what you're saying, Jackie, definitely you be authentic, don't be afraid to shine, and just lay out all your accomplishments and definitely add in those keywords because those will help you stand out more. Thank you so much, Allison, Claire, and Jacquilynne, for joining us today on this panel. Please, for job candidates, check out the links that they've posted in the chat today. There's some links for co-op programs. There's links for, I believe, some career page links. I also see some LinkedIn links as well. So feel free to check out those links while they're still here in the chat before we close Zoom for today. And I just want to also mention that we have a panel coming up on January 17th with speakers also from TD, another speaker from TD, which she entered in Zoom early. I don't know if she's still here, but the speaker for January was in the panel today. No, I think she's gone. And so we've got TD Island Health, so another company from Vancouver Island. We've got BC Assessment and BMO. So feel free to join us if you're still looking for, if you haven't found any work, in the new year, feel free to join us again and, meet some new speakers and do a bit of networking here within the panel. Also, you can feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is events@BCJobs.ca. So I am all of the events. So if you have any questions about job market or hiring, or what companies are hiring, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email, and I'm happy to let you know what I know. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful holiday season. Stay warm, stay safe, and maybe see you next time at our next panel in the new year. I should also mention we do have a career fair coming out February 6th in downtown Vancouver. Tickets will be available soon on Eventbrite, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We've got some great companies lined up. We've got ICBC, we've got Fraser Health, ISS of BC. We're in partnership with BC Tech Association and Innovate BC as well for that. So more companies are currently signing up, so you can keep track of our lineup on LinkedIn, where I post about it regularly. So have a great rest of your week, everybody, and connect with you in the future. Stay safe, stay warm.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, I'll leave it open for a few more minutes if you want to grab those links from the chat. All right. Any plans for this evening, Allison, Claire, and Jacquilynne?
I gotta watch some Christmas movies. We have a Christmas movie challenge with the team.
Fantastic.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
I just watched an Italian Christmas series on Netflix. It was really cute.
That sounds fun. I'm actually going to a little party with actual people.
Oh,
fun.
No,
I haven't been to one of those in forever.
I know I haven't been to one in 3 years. My husband volunteers with the Victoria Children's Choir, and they're having a little get together for the volunteers and their spouses. With
Fantastic.
People. I know. I get to get dressed up.
I love dressing up. Well, I hope you have so much fun tonight, Allison. And I hope you enjoy your movie night tonight, Claire, with your team. Yeah. All right. I think most people have left now, so I'm going to start to close up Zoom. So happy to have you all on the panel, and hope to see you sometime in the new year. You're always welcome back.
Thanks so much. And Claire and Jackie, it was a pleasure meeting you both.
Yeah,
happy holidays.
You too.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Bye.